George Washington was a key figure in the American Revolution and the first President of the United States. His military leadership as the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army was instrumental in securing American independence. Washington's ability to unite the colonial forces and his strategic acumen were vital to the revolutionary cause. During his 2 terms as the president, he established foundational government practices, including the cabinet system, and set the precedent of a peaceful transfer of power by stepping down after 2 terms. His legacy as the father of his country remains a testament to his leadership and vision in the nation's formative years. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, into a family of modest means. His father, Augustine Washington, was a prosperous planter and a justice of the peace, while his mother, Mary Ball Washington, came from a family of the Virginia gentry. Washington was the eldest son of Augustine's second marriage and had several half-siblings and full siblings. His formal education was relatively limited and ended by the time he was about 15. He was tutored at home and attended a local school where he learned basic reading, writing, and arithmetic. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he did not attend college. Instead, he gained practical knowledge and skills through hands-on experience. George Washington became a land surveyor through a combination of family connections, practical experience, and early ambition. Lawrence Washington, George's half-brother, married into the Fairfax family, one of the most influential families in Virginia. Lord Thomas Fairfax, a wealthy landowner, held vast estates in the northern neck of Virginia. Recognizing young George's potential, Lawrence introduced him to the Fairfax family, which provided George with opportunities to prove himself. At the age of 16, he was invited by Lord Fairfax to join a surveying expedition of his lands in the Shenandoah Valley. This experience was invaluable, as it provided hands-on training under the guidance of experienced surveyors. Impressed by his competence and diligence, he was appointed as the official surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia, in 1749, at the age of 17. This position was his first official job and gave him significant responsibility and independence. Over the next few years, Washington's reputation as a capable surveyor grew. His work not only provided him with a steady income but also allowed him to acquire land for himself. This accumulation of property contributed to his rising status in Virginia society. Washington's career as a surveyor helped him develop critical skills such as attention to detail, perseverance, and an understanding of the Virginia frontier, all of which would serve him well in his later military and political endeavors. George Washington's military career began in the early 1750s, influenced by the geopolitical tensions between the British and French empires in North America. His first foray into the military was through the colonial militia. In 1752, following the death of his half-brother Lawrence Washington, George inherited Lawrence's position as adjutant of the colony. This role involved training militia officers and organizing the colony's defenses. In 1753, at the age of 21, Washington was commissioned as a major in the Virginia militia. His first significant assignment came that same year when he was chosen by Governor Robert Dinwiddie of Virginia to deliver a message to the French, demanding that they vacate the Ohio Valley, a region claimed by both the British and the French. Washington embarked on a perilous winter journey to Fort Le Boeuf, where he delivered Dinwiddie's message to the French commander. The French refused to leave, which set the stage for military conflict. His detailed report of this mission gained him recognition and showcased his leadership and resilience. In 1754, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and sent to the Ohio Valley with a small force to defend the British claim. This led to his first combat experience at the Battle of Jumonville Glen, where his troops ambushed a French scouting party, killing the French commander, Joseph Coulon de Jumonville. This skirmish is often cited as the opening battle of what would become the French and Indian War. Following the skirmish, Washington hastily constructed Fort Necessity. The fort was soon attacked by a larger French force, and he was forced to surrender on July 4, 1754. Despite this defeat, his bravery and tactical decisions during the engagement earned him a reputation for resilience. His military career continued to advance when he served as a volunteer aide-de-camp to British General Edward Braddock during the disastrous expedition to capture Fort Duquesne. Despite the expedition's failure and Braddock's death, Washington's conduct during the retreat, where he helped to organize the remaining forces and ensure their safety, further enhanced his military standing. In 1755, Washington was appointed the colonel of the Virginia Regiment and commander-in-chief of all Virginia forces. Over the next few years, he was responsible for defending the colony's frontier against French and Native American raids, gaining valuable military experience and honing his leadership skills. George Washington retired from his colonial military career in 1758, following a series of events during the French and Indian War that led him to reassess his role and future. He participated in the campaign to capture Fort Duquesne, a key French stronghold in the Ohio Valley. This campaign was part of the larger British effort to gain control of the region. Under the command of British General John Forbes, Washington played a significant role, despite his disagreements with Forbes on military strategy. In November 1758, the British forces successfully captured Fort Duquesne, finding it abandoned and burned by the retreating French. This victory marked a turning point in the war and diminished the immediate French threat in the Ohio Valley, prompting Washington to resign his commission. His resignation was partly driven by his disillusionment with the colonial military structure and the lack of opportunities for advancement within the British military hierarchy. Throughout his military service, he had experienced several frustrations, including conflicts with British military officers, lack of recognition and promotion within the British Army, and the challenges of leading poorly trained and inadequately supplied colonial troops. These frustrations were compounded by his desire for a more settled and secure life. Washington retired to his estate at Mount Vernon, which he had inherited from his half-brother Lawrence. After retiring from military service in December 1758, George Washington decided to run for a seat in the House of Burgesses, representing Frederick County. The election process involved campaigning and garnering support from local voters, who were primarily landowners. He received strong support from influential figures and friends, such as Lord Fairfax, who had significant sway in the region. His military service and leadership during the French and Indian War had also earned him a favorable reputation among voters. Washington conducted a traditional election campaign, which included hosting social events and providing refreshments to voters, a common practice at the time. His efforts paid off, and he was elected to the House of Burgesses in July 1758. His election to the House of Burgesses marked the beginning of his political career. Serving in the colonial legislature allowed him to gain experience in legislative processes, governance, and public service. During his time in the House of Burgesses, Washington focused on representing the interests of his constituents, addressing local concerns, and supporting colonial resistance to British policies. His tenure lasted from 1758 to 1775, during which he became increasingly involved in the growing movement for American independence. George Washington married Martha Custis, née Dandridge, on January 6, 1759. Martha was a wealthy widow with two young children, John Parke Custis and Martha Parke Custis. The marriage took place at the White House Plantation in New Kent County, Virginia, which was Martha's home. Before marrying Washington, Martha was known as Martha Dandridge Custis. She was a wealthy widow who had inherited a substantial estate from her first husband, Daniel Parke Custis, who passed away in 1757. By marrying Martha, Washington became the stepfather to her two children from her previous marriage. Although they had no children together, Washington formed a close bond with Martha's children and later her grandchildren. After their marriage, Washington and Martha made their home at Mount Vernon. Martha was a supportive and steadfast partner to Washington throughout his military and political career. She managed the household at Mount Vernon and accompanied Washington to his winter camps during the Revolutionary War, providing support and boosting the morale of the troops. Their marriage was characterized by mutual respect, affection, and partnership, playing a significant role in Washington's personal and professional life. Washington's life as a planter at Mount Vernon was characterized by diligent management, innovation, and a commitment to agricultural improvement. Initially, his estate was approximately 2,000 acres, but over the years, he expanded it to about 8,000 acres, divided into several farms. George Washington managed various crops and livestock. Initially, tobacco was the primary cash crop, but he shifted to wheat and other grains due to tobacco's soil-depleting effects and the fluctuating market prices. He also grew corn, vegetables, and maintained fruit orchards. He was an early adopter of agricultural innovations. He implemented crop rotation, experimented with new crops, and used fertilizers to maintain soil fertility. His interest in agricultural techniques reflected his broader commitment to improving productivity and sustainability. Washington's plantations were largely worked by enslaved labor, whose number grew over the years. However, his interactions with enslaved workers and the realities of plantation life contributed to his evolving stance on slavery. He became increasingly uncomfortable with the institution, leading to provisions in his will for the emancipation of his enslaved workers upon his wife's death. He was a meticulous manager, keeping detailed records of the estate's operations, including work schedules, production outputs, and financial transactions. His diaries and farm reports reveal his hands-on approach and constant supervision of the plantation activities. In addition to crop production, Washington established a grist mill and a distillery at Mount Vernon. These enterprises diversified his income and provided local farmers with services. He also engaged in commercial fishing on the Potomac River, further enhancing the estate's economic base. For Washington, Mount Vernon was not just an economic enterprise but also a source of personal fulfillment. He took great pride in his role as a planter and landowner, often expressing his love for the estate and its operations. Washington's opposition to the British Crown began to solidify in the years leading up to the American Revolution due to several factors. George Washington, like many other American colonists, was deeply troubled by British taxation policies, such as the Stamp Act, 1765, and the Townshend Acts, 1767, which imposed taxes on various goods and activities without colonial representation in the British Parliament. He saw these measures as unjust and a violation of colonial rights. Moreover, the passage of the Intolerable Acts, 1774, further fueled his opposition to British rule. These punitive measures were enacted in response to the Boston Tea Party and included the closure of the Port of Boston, restrictions on colonial self-government, and the quartering of British troops in colonial towns. Washington viewed these acts as oppressive and intolerable infringements on American liberties. George Washington played an active role in the colonial resistance to British policies. In 1769, he was a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses, which passed a set of resolutions opposing the Townshend Acts and asserting the principle of no taxation without representation. He also attended both the First and Second Continental Congresses in 1774 and 1775, respectively, where he joined other colonial leaders in denouncing British actions and advocating for colonial rights. His involvement in these congresses helped to shape his growing opposition to British rule. Washington believed in the principles of self-governance and saw British rule as a threat to American liberties and autonomy. He was influenced by Enlightenment ideas of individual rights, representative government, and the social contract between rulers and the governed. By the outbreak of the American Revolution in 1775, Washington had emerged as a vocal advocate for American independence and a key leader in the fight against British oppression. In June 1775, the Continental Congress appointed George Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. His military experience, leadership qualities, and stature as a Virginian made him a natural choice for this crucial role. He viewed his appointment as Commander-in-Chief as a solemn duty to defend American liberties and secure independence from British rule. He accepted the position with a sense of duty and determination. His decision to lead the Continental Army required significant personal sacrifice. He resigned from his comfortable life at Mount Vernon, ready to endure years of hardship and privation during the war and risk his life for the cause of American independence. As Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolution, George Washington developed and implemented overarching military strategies aimed at achieving American independence. He emphasized the importance of patience, endurance, and strategic maneuvering, knowing that the fledgling Continental Army could not afford to engage the superior British forces in direct confrontation. He oversaw the organization and training of the Continental Army, transforming it from a disparate collection of state militias into a more cohesive and disciplined fighting force. He implemented standardized training, drilling, and discipline measures to improve efficiency and effectiveness. Washington also grappled with significant logistical challenges, including shortages of weapons, ammunition, clothing, and food supplies. He worked tirelessly to address these deficiencies, often relying on resourcefulness and improvisation to keep the army supplied and operational. He demonstrated tactical acumen on the battlefield, making critical decisions during engagements such as the battles of Trenton, Princeton, and Saratoga. His ability to adapt to changing circumstances and capitalize on opportunities was instrumental in securing key victories for the colonial cause. Washington understood the importance of maintaining morale among his troops, particularly during periods of adversity. He delivered inspirational speeches, issued proclamations, and cultivated a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose within the army. More importantly, his personal integrity, resilience, and dedication to the cause of American independence inspired confidence and loyalty among his troops. He led by example, sharing in the hardships and sacrifices endured by his soldiers. Washington was also engaged in diplomatic efforts to secure support from foreign powers, particularly France, and he navigated complex relationships with Native American tribes, seeking to secure alliances or neutrality to prevent them from siding with the British. His efforts to maintain diplomatic channels with Native American leaders contributed to the overall war effort. British forces, under General William Howe, defeated Washington's army in the largest battle of the war. Despite the loss, Washington managed to evacuate his troops safely from Long Island, preventing a catastrophic defeat and preserving the Continental Army. Although it resulted in a tactical defeat for the Americans, the Battle of Long Island showcased Washington's ability to conduct a strategic withdrawal and preserve his army for future engagements. In the Battle of Trenton, George Washington executed a daring crossing of the icy Delaware River and surprised and defeated the Hessian mercenaries stationed at Trenton. In the Battle of Princeton, Washington successfully outmaneuvered British forces and won another important victory. These battles rejuvenated American morale and demonstrated Washington's strategic brilliance. American forces, led by General Horatio Gates and General Benedict Arnold, defeated British General John Burgoyne's army. Burgoyne's surrender at Saratoga marked the first major defeat of a British army and encouraged France to enter into a formal alliance with the United States. American forces engaged British troops in a fierce battle in New Jersey. Despite initial setbacks, Washington rallied his troops and successfully held the field against British attacks, forcing the enemy to withdraw. The battle ended in a tactical draw but boosted American morale. American and French forces, under Washington's command and with the support of French naval forces, laid siege to the British Army at Yorktown, Virginia. British General Cornwallis surrendered on October 19, 1781, marking the end of significant combat operations in the war. The decisive siege of Yorktown in 1781 marked the last major military engagement of the American Revolutionary War. General George Washington, commanding American and French forces, successfully besieged British General Lord Cornwallis's army. Cornwallis's surrender significantly weakened British resolve and ability to continue the war. After the victory at Yorktown, peace negotiations began in earnest. The preliminary articles of peace were signed in Paris on November 30, 1782, outlining the terms agreed upon by the American and British negotiators. The formal Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3, 1783. This treaty officially ended the war and recognized the sovereignty of the United States. Key provisions included the recognition of American independence, the establishment of borders for the new nation, and the resolution of issues related to debts and the treatment of loyalists. The Continental Congress ratified the Treaty of Paris on January 14, 1784. This ratification was a crucial step in implementing the terms of the treaty and ensuring the transition to peace. Following the treaty, British forces gradually evacuated their remaining posts in the United States. The last British troops left New York City on November 25, 1783, a day celebrated as Evacuation Day. George Washington was elected to be the first President of the United States for several reasons, reflecting his leadership qualities, national stature, and the trust and admiration he commanded among his contemporaries. His leadership as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War earned him widespread respect and admiration. He was seen as a unifying figure who transcended regional and ideological divisions. His leadership helped to forge a sense of national identity and solidarity among the diverse colonies, making him a natural choice to lead the newly independent nation. Washington was also widely regarded as a man of unimpeachable character, integrity, and virtue. His reputation for honesty, honor, and selflessness inspired trust and confidence among his peers and the American people. Moreover, his voluntary resignation as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army at the end of the Revolutionary War, coupled with his reluctance to seek power or personal gain, further enhanced his reputation for civic virtue and commitment to Republican ideals. Washington's experience as a military leader, planter, and statesman gave him a broad understanding of the challenges facing the new nation. His service in the Virginia House of Burgesses and the Continental Congress provided valuable political experience, and his reputation as a pragmatic leader who could navigate complex political dynamics was seen as essential for the stability and success of the fledgling republic. His election as the first President of the United States in 1789 was virtually unanimous. He received all 69 electoral votes cast by the Electoral College, reflecting the high regard in which he was held by his fellow citizens. George Washington was inaugurated as the first President of the United States on April 30, 1789, in New York City. His first term focused on establishing the framework of the federal government, including the executive departments, judiciary, and financial system. He appointed prominent figures such as Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and Henry Knox to his cabinet, establishing the precedent of cabinet governance and seeking diverse perspectives in decision-making. His administration grappled with economic issues, including the creation of a national bank, 1791, and the implementation of Hamilton's financial plan, which aimed to stabilize the economy, assume state debts, and establish a system of tariffs and taxes. In 1793, Washington issued the Neutrality Proclamation, declaring America's neutrality in the conflict between Britain and France. This proclamation aimed to protect American interests and avoid entanglement in European conflicts. He also negotiated the Jay Treaty with Britain in 1795, resolving outstanding issues from the Revolutionary War and improving trade relations between the two nations. Despite controversy, the treaty helped to prevent war and stabilize relations with Britain. In his farewell address, Washington emphasized the importance of national unity, warned against the dangers of political factions and foreign entanglements, and stressed the need for moral and civic virtue in maintaining a free republic. He also established the tradition of serving only 2 terms as president, voluntarily stepping down after his second term, setting a precedent that would endure until the 22nd Amendment was ratified in 1951. Washington's presidency solidified his status as a unifying figure and symbol of national leadership. His integrity, wisdom, and commitment to Republican principles left an indelible mark on American politics and governance. His tenure as president laid the groundwork for the presidency's powers and responsibilities, shaping the office into a central institution of American government. After retiring from the presidency in 1797, George Washington returned to Mount Vernon, where he focused on managing his extensive plantation, overseeing agricultural operations, and attending to the affairs of his estate. He enjoyed spending time with his family, including his wife Martha and her grandchildren. Although retired from public office, he remained a respected figure and continued to offer advice and guidance to his successors and other political leaders. He maintained a voluminous correspondence with friends, colleagues, and statesmen, providing insights into national affairs and offering counsel on various matters. Washington closely followed national and international events, staying informed about developments in politics, diplomacy, and current affairs. He remained engaged with the progress of the young nation he had helped to establish, advocating for the preservation of national unity, the protection of individual liberties, and the importance of public service and citizenship. His birthday on February 22 was widely celebrated across the nation, with public ceremonies, parades, and tributes honoring his contributions to American independence and the founding of the nation. In his later years, he faced various health issues, including rheumatism, dental problems, and respiratory ailments. Despite his declining health, he maintained an active lifestyle and continued to fulfill his responsibilities. On December 14, 1799, George Washington passed away at Mount Vernon at the age of 67. His death was mourned by the nation, and he was eulogized as the father of his country and a symbol of American greatness and unity. George Washington is often referred to as the father of his country for his central role in the founding of the United States. He symbolizes the ideals of liberty, democracy, and self-government that are central to the American identity. His ability to bridge regional and ideological divides and forge consensus among diverse factions made him a unifying figure during a critical period in American history. His leadership helped to foster a sense of national unity and solidarity among the fledgling states. Washington's presidency established crucial precedents for the American presidency, including the two-term tradition, the formation of the cabinet, and the exercise of executive authority. His leadership helped to define the powers and responsibilities of the executive branch, and his support for a strong central government and commitment to Republican principles helped to shape the structure and function of the federal government. His image and likeness are ubiquitous in American culture, appearing on currency, monuments, and memorials throughout the country. His name and legacy are commemorated in numerous cities, towns, and landmarks across the nation. Today, Washington's estate at Mount Vernon serves as a National Historic Landmark and museum dedicated to preserving his memory and legacy. Visitors can explore the estate and learn about Washington's life, achievements, and contributions to American history. His leadership qualities, including integrity, courage, and perseverance, continue to inspire leaders in various fields. His example serves as a model for leadership and public service, both in the United States and around the world. Despite the passage of time, George Washington remains one of the most revered and admired figures in American history. His legacy continues to resonate with people of all ages and backgrounds, embodying the enduring values and aspirations of the American nation.